Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. It's your host, Matt Zahab. We're buzzing as always, and I am super pumped to have today's guest on the show, the one and only Oliver Linch, CEO of Bittrex Global, coming in hot from Bermuda. Wow, that must suck. Oliver is head of CEO at Bittrex Global, one of the world's most secure digital asset exchanges. He also has over a decade of experience as a financial regulatory lawyer, having advised major investment banks, exchanges, and leading financial institutions on regulatory matters across the EEA, UK, and US. During his tenure with a leading global law firm, he specialized in various areas of financial regulatory advisory work, with particular expertise in advising exchanges, clearinghouses, and other financial market infrastructure companies. Super pumped to have this lad on. Ollie, welcome to the show, my friend.
A real pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Pumped to have you on. How nice is that? You know, going from UK to the one and only island. What's it like on the island? How friggin' sweet is it?
It's great. And I'm here quite a lot of the time because we're regulated in Bermuda. We're also regulated in Liechtenstein. So I get to spend some of my time in two of the most beautiful countries in the world. But what's really exciting about being here is we've just had Bermuda Tech Week on the island, and there's a real buzz, a real excitement about the digital asset sector in Bermuda, and it's really showing the way forwards and the way that actually the future of crypto can be regulated, heavily regulated, but that can lead to its own level of enthusiasm and excitement. And it's just an engagement here in Bermuda for digital assets, for crypto in general, that I don't think I've seen anywhere else in the world. So it's a real pleasure to be here, not just because of the regulatory environment, but because of the business environment too.
How would a place like Bermuda differ from, say, Dubai or Singapore, which are two spots in the world that are also, you know, very open to digital assets and crypto? What's the vibe like? And I know that's a tough question coming from me on my end, but if you could sort of depict, you know, the not so much the quan, but more the qual, like how it feels being there. Like, what are the main differences? I'm sure you've been to both those spots as well.
I have. I've been lucky to do a lot of work in those spots as well. I think the difference here is Bermuda was such an early adopter. You know, the Digital Assets and Business Act, which is still in many ways, the world's leading light on how to do crypto regulation properly. That was adopted here in 2018. In crypto years, that's about 50 years ago, right? So there's just a real sense here of not resting on their laurels, building something up. But it's difficult really to compare it to Dubai or to compare it to Singapore because we're an island here of, 55, 60,000 people. They're not trying to compete as a hub in the way that Dubai might be or Singapore might be. What they're trying to do is show that actually what you need to make crypto a success is a proper fit-for-purpose bespoke regulatory regime that has been carefully designed with crypto first and crypto in mind, coupled with a regulator that has real-world experience and knows how to actually supervise and monitor financial services firms. And I don't mean crypto firms, I mean financial services firms.
Yeah,
and in Bermuda here, the BMA has that experience when it comes to insurance. Liechtenstein, again, the regulator there, the FMA, had that experience in the case of private wealth and banking. And it's really that synergy, those two things working together. You can write whatever pretty words you want on a page, right? Anyone can do that. Anyone can copy and paste. What they're doing here in Bermuda and what they're really showing is how that can come to life and how that can be actually a force for good and respected around the world.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I'm all for these smaller islands, really making moves. And again, just like you spoke about 2 minutes ago, it's such a large asset class, not even just financial, but as in the whole world economy. It's so important. We're becoming more and more digital every day, and we really need some solid and legit regulatory framework. But before we get into a bunch of that stuff, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you at the start of the show. Tell me about your career. Let's even go a little bit before that. Childhood. Where did you grow up? What did you fancy? Sounds like you got that beautiful British accent. What football team you support? Tell me a little bit about you, and then we'll get into Bittrex Global, your career, and a bunch of the regulatory stuff.
Sure. Well, I'm very boring because I'm a lawyer, and lawyers are by definition just a little bit dull. No, I'm kidding. But I am a lawyer. I grew up in London. I spent my whole life there, and I'd like to say that when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut or a fireman or whatever it is. But I think something in me that always just thought I don't remember when I was a kid, but at some point I'd be drawn to the law. And the reason for that is I realized very early on that law has the potential to actually allow people to interact properly. right? And
Well said.
it allows everything from, if I go to an apple cart and try and buy an apple, right? I know that what I'm going to get is an apple, not a pear. I know that it's not going to be poisoned, right? Because there's going to be some kind of food standards, and the vendor knows
it's regulated,
right?
It's
exactly.
regulated.
And the vendor knows he's going to get 50 pence from me, and if he doesn't, then he can sue, and he's got certain actions. And those principles allow me to go and buy an apple from an apple cart. And without that, most of the time it would work, but when it doesn't work, then we're all at sea.
Yeah,
and it has become increasingly apparent to me as I've worked more and more in the crypto sector that without that fundamental, and that's the same rules that apply to buying an apple from an apple cart to multi-billion-dollar transactions. Without that, you just don't have the confidence to do anything. You don't have the confidence. You don't know what the rules of the game are to have any kind of interaction with any kind of person. So that's kind of what sort of motivated me to get into law. And I spent then a decade plus as a regulatory advisory lawyer. I was fortunate enough to specialize quite early and advise some of the world's largest banks, traditional exchanges, broker-dealers, the whole gamut of regulatory environment in the traditional finance sphere, focusing on financial market infrastructure. So exchanges, clearinghouses, data repositories, that was kind of my niche. And then I guess about, in the last 5 years or so of that, I started working more and more in the Middle East. I was involved in some of the mega projects out there, including in Saudi Arabia with the Neon project. And those were very tech-focused. They were very tech-focused, and they wanted to be and still want to be very futuristic, fintech-driven. And so you sort of get traditional exchanges plus tech, mash them together, you sort of get crypto. Yeah. And so here I am. And I joined Bittrex Global, actually originally as general counsel in 2021, and then got the bump up to the CEO chair last year. So I've been doing both roles since then.
What got you on about crypto, Oliver? Again, I assume, one should never assume, but here I am assuming, but I assume you were making a pretty penny and had a very cushy job. Again, there's not many financial, regulatory, world-class lawyers in the world. People like you definitely do not grow on trees. And moving to the crypto sector was definitely a massive, massive risk. Why the jump? Why'd you do it? What tickled your fancy? What made you move to the crypto sphere?
I think it was a combination of things, but at root, it's the opportunity to be involved in, I think, the biggest conversation that has been had and will be had for generations to come. I think blockchain technology is genuine. Everything's described as disruptive these days, right? I mean, I got out of bed this morning and I stubbed my toe, and that was disruptive. And not everything is important and everything is meaningful, but I think blockchain technology is genuinely disruptive and meaningful, and we're only beginning to scratch the surface of it. And I think the opportunity to be in, if not quite at the ground level, then pretty damn close to the ground level, is something that really appealed to me. And I wanted to be part of building something and be part of shaping something. And I think the 2 years that I've been involved, we've seen a dramatic change in the ethos of the sector as a whole. We've seen regulators, be that the EU with MiCA, the UK with its consultation paper that came out earlier this year, Dubai, you mentioned earlier, Singapore, Hong Kong. We've seen jurisdictions around the world realize that actually this stuff is important and it's not going anywhere, and they've got to get a grip on it. And being part of helping shape that is really important. And that regulatory side of it is really important to me personally, because if you don't create a path for good actors to behave well and to show people how crypto can actually be used for good and to create opportunities for people that don't otherwise exist, you don't create that good path, all you really do is clear the way for bad actors to behave badly. And for me, that's the power of what regulation can do and should be doing. And ultimately, it's important to remember these regulations and these frameworks aren't here to make geeky lawyers like me feel good about ourselves, although, I do. They're there to protect people. They're there to protect the most vulnerable. And those people that we've spent decades in the traditional finance sector designing a patchwork of protections around. And to my mind, there's no reason that those same protections, those same principles should suddenly not be important or should fly out the window just because you put the word digital at the front of it. And I think the opportunity really here to create both a carrot and a stick for these jurisdictions. The carrot is people want to get involved in this stuff. They want to participate. They want to innovate. There's some incredibly exciting opportunities that crypto affords people that traditional finance simply either can't or won't. So if they can capture a bit of that, and that's what, take my native UK, when they talk about becoming a crypto hub, that's what they mean. They want to capture a piece of that and say, yeah, we want to foster that innovation, promote that entrepreneurialism. That's a great carrot. The stick is, if you get it wrong, there could be a scandal, right? And there are jurisdictions that are highly motivated by the possibility of a scandal, are scared of that possibility, but actually are quickly realizing that the best way to handle that is not to stick your head in the sand and pretend the whole thing doesn't exist, but rather to create a framework for it being done properly. And the absence of rules is not a solution, it's a cop-out.
How does someone like me who has zero regulatory framework experience and obviously is not a member of the bar, a member of the law, how do we even go about thinking what types of framework, rules, and regulations need to be implemented in order for crypto to actually be legit? And I love the analogy you used earlier. Well, I'm paraphrasing, but life's a big game, right? We're all in one arena. If you don't know the rules, you can't win. If you don't know the rules, it's almost zero sum. You're automatically losing. How do we set, as an industry, how do we set legit rules that actually have positive emphasis on all players of the game and let everyone have an equal share at potentially winning, for lack of better words? Like, what needs to be done? And I understand this is a very tough and nuanced question, and I apologize in advance for throwing this at you, and I've asked this many times, and it's tough to get a really, really good answer. If you were, let's say, head of global crypto for the whole world, obviously that's not a thing, but if you had that power, what would you do in order to make legit rules so people can participate and have a chance at winning?
So I think at the end, you came really close to where my answer is, right? Which is, your question is, how does the average person, in old-fashioned English law, we call them the man on the Clapham omnibus, the guy just going about his business, right? How does he know that he's protected and can engage in crypto in a positive and secure way? And the answer is, or the answer ought to be, because we've created minimum standards around the world that mean that he can enter into any transaction in a legitimate jurisdiction with the same confidence. So let me give you an example. If you want to go and buy shares, right, you might understand what shares are, you might know what you want to achieve, and you might even have a good idea of what companies it is you want to invest in. But you basically know that if you need to go and buy those shares in New York or London or Tokyo or Amsterdam or Australia, wherever it is, the rules are basically the same. Sure, there are local variations and there are slightly different ways of doing things and there are maybe slightly different processes. But at core, you're going to get the same level of protection. You're going to have the same rules about transparency. You're going to have the same rules about, if there are cooling off periods. You're going to have the same rules about insider trading. It doesn't really matter to you as an individual where it is you end up. And that's because we have international standard setters. In the case of exchanges, that's CPSS, IOSCO, setting out the principles for financial market infrastructure that essentially, so long as you're playing in a legitimate jurisdiction, you're going to get the same general level of protection. We don't have that in crypto yet, and we need it. And I think we're getting there, but far too slowly. That doesn't require what was it you called it? Global world head of crypto, which all sounds a bit James Bond villain to me, but it does require a level of coordination to eliminate old-fashioned regulatory arbitrage. It shouldn't be a feature of doing crypto any more than it's a feature of transacting on traditional exchanges. So that's what we need, and we're getting there, right? And the way we're getting there, look, you just had the EU adopting MiCA. That's the largest legal jurisdiction in the world to have adopted a comprehensive regulatory framework. It can be done. It is being done. The G8 is looking at it. G20 is looking at it. IOSCO themselves are looking at it. And I'm impatient. And it's important to remember, it took decades to get to that stage in traditional finance. And we're talking about doing that same thing in, minutes, hours, years, maybe in crypto.
Good point.
So we are impatient, but I'm impatient because I see every day the opportunities that are there and the success stories that people want to be participating in. But yeah, we need to make sure that those protections are there and that people can do it against that backdrop.
Well, incredibly well said there. Is there, it seems like an obvious question, and perhaps I'm incredibly wrong here, but is there one country, i.e. the US of A, that could potentially actually adopt proper crypto framework rules and regulations that would be that domino effect for the rest of the world to join in? Because again, it seems like you have the Dubais, the Bermudas, the Singapores, the Hong Kongs that have been proactive and actually want to move the needle and make this shit happen. But, without the UKs and the United States of America's, I mean, my country, Canada, we're a joke. I'm not even going to, throw us in that ring. But, the big dogs, if they actually implement framework, will that be the catalyst and will that be the domino that sort of kicks off the parade?
I don't know. And I'm not going to pretend that there is one catalyst that will solve the whole thing. I think the UK and the US are two really good examples at the moment. The UK is sending out somewhat mixed messages. The government is sending out these, we want to be a crypto hub. And we know the Prime Minister, when he was Chancellor at least, was very pro-crypto. We want to be a hub. We want to attract investment. Some very high-profile investment announcements earlier this year with A16Z and all that kind of stuff on the one hand. And then on the other hand, the new rules on financial promotions, which came in last week, are extremely difficult to comply with. And we certainly had to put a lot of time and resources and effort into ensuring that we complied with them, even when they contradicted themselves and were really quite difficult to follow. And I think it's really easy to forget that these things do need to be thought through very carefully and that solutions are not straightforward. But it just goes to show how it can be done. The US is a different problem altogether, because the US, I don't think there's anyone now that doubts that the US regulatory environment is so impossible to navigate as to effectively make business impossible. Like, when I said earlier, if you don't create a good path for good people to act, that's what's lacking, right? And Bittrex US, which is separate from Bittrex Global, but previously existed in the US and served US customers, they just looked at it and said, well, look, we just don't know what to do here, right? We spent a lot of money on expensive lawyers, and we simply don't know how it is possible to comply. So we're just going to get out of the US. And they're not the only ones.
So unfortunate.
By far, right? And it's really sad. And it's tempting. I used to say, the great joy of being CEO of Bittrex Global is I don't need to worry about the US. I need to worry about the SEC. But that's not true. That's always naive, right? Because the US is still the single largest economy in the world. It's still the place for entrepreneurialism, for innovation. You've got the best universities. You've got the infrastructure. And if the future of crypto is just part of the wider financial services sector, which is where I think it's going, then to think you can do that without the US is, I'm afraid, it's naive. You can't just pull down the shutters and pretend the US doesn't exist. It's too important for that. So we do need some movement in the US. It looks like, maybe we're going to get some in the coming months or years. Who knows? But at the moment, the chaos, the confusion is it's just impossible.
It's wild. Yeah, it's truly banana lands there. It's a purebred shit show. And again, it's unfortunate because, a lot of us, myself included, are like, there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And now it's like, oh, sweet. Now we have two wars on our hand, potentially World War III. We have one of the most bleak and terrible economical outlooks that we've had probably since 2008. And of course, we have an election next year. I mean, I often say we, even though I'm not American. It's just, as a Canadian, you're technically a byproduct of America. So you're even though you're Canadian, you're technically American.
I think the king disagrees, but I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I love that. But look, Ollie, we got to take a quick break and give a huge shout out to our sponsor of the show. And when we get back, we are going to get into everything Bittrex Global related, a little bit of history, the awesome win by you guys with the SEC, and like Ollie spoke about as well, Bittrex USA, which is now, I guess, no longer a part of Bittrex Global. Well, it is, but it isn't. We'll get into that in 1 second. Before then, huge shout out to Prime XPT, longtime friends of CryptoNews.com and longtime sponsors of the Crypto News podcast. We love these guys as they offer a robust trading system for beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet, you can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prem XBT is also running an exclusive promotion for listeners of the Crypto News podcast. Use the promo code CryptoNews50, that's CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, that is CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. And now back to the show with Oliver. Let's get into Bittrex. Start of the show here. Bittrex Global, not just Bittrex. You got to walk me through and walk our listeners through the SEC lawsuit. What exactly happened there? The split of, Bittrex as a whole, and then Bittrex Global, Bittrex USA. It seems like many crypto exchanges have unfortunately followed. Well, I guess fortunately is rather the correct word, the same suit. And again, this is just cherry on the cake, fortifying your point from about 2 minutes ago. America has no clue what they're doing when it comes to crypto regulation. And if you have an exchange there, you either pretty much only operate there or you operate for every other country in the world. It's absolute bananas. The floor is yours. Tell us what happened. And I guess start with a little bit of history of Bittrex, because you guys are indeed one of the longest and, and most secure exchanges on the planet as well.
Yeah, so I think the history helps. So Bittrex was set up in the US, established in 2013-14, and serviced US customers. And then as the global footprint got bigger, in 2018-19, they decided to set up an entirely separate company, which became Bittrex Global. And so Bittrex US was never part of Bittrex Global. Bittrex Global was never part of the US. They were entirely separate companies, still are entirely separate companies, different boards, different staff, just sharing the name Bittrex. That is and was the case. And then Bittrex US earlier this year decided that it could no longer continue to operate in the US. And so it shut down and it's going through its wind down process at the moment. Bittrex Global, which only serves rest of world customers, doesn't allow any US customers onto its platform, doesn't offer its services into the US, and has always operated in that way, continues to operate unaffected by the shutdown of Bittrex US. The SEC case, they came and they said that both Bittrex US and Bittrex Global were operating as an unregistered exchange in the US. Now, from my perspective, we've settled that suit with the SEC on a neither admit nor deny basis. So we've neither admitted nor denied the charges. We've decided to draw a line under it and move on. We're doing what it is that we do best, which is serving our customers. And we were pleased to have been able to just draw a line and move on. And others have not been so lucky, have not been able to do that so far, and are still subject to the confusion that we were talking about a few minutes ago.
Yeah, that's a couple years down the road. If the USA gets their ducks in a row, is there a way back in? Like, can it happen? Will it happen? Or is it so far gone that it's like, c'est la vie, we're going to move on?
I don't know. I mean, Bittrex Global will never be in the US, that's for sure. I don't know whether anyone at Bittrex will still be around and want to get involved. But I think the question is more about the industry as a whole, right? Which is like, what can the US do now to keep those people that haven't yet bled or reattract those people that have? And I think the answer there is actually quite straightforward. We need clarity. We need rules. We need to know what we're doing. We need that apple cart, right? We need to know how to engage, because without that, you couldn't possibly set up a new business in the US without that regulatory clarity. And it's not like we're asking them to reinvent the wheel. We know what it looks like. I can go and write it for them if they want, right? But it's a political, not a legal problem, right? They only need to look as far across as Bermuda, right? To have a regulatory framework that works. And if that's not enough, and I've of course acknowledged that there's a big difference between Bermuda with its small population and the US with its global financial clout. So if Bermuda doesn't work, look at the EU, right? The EU managed it with MiCA. Nobody has ever accused the EU of being nimble. No one has ever accused the EU of having straightforward political processes, but they managed it. So, I'm not naive enough to think that one lawyer shouting into a microphone is going to change anything. But we have to recognize that it's a political problem much more than a legal one. When people say, it's too difficult, or there's, we don't know whether to turn left or turn right. Like, we do. We know what it's going to look like. We know what it needs to look like. It comes back to what we were talking about with global standard setters. Like, this isn't reinventing the wheel. This is getting it done in the US. And I don't know enough about the US political process to know who needs to crack whose heads together, but they better get on and do it quickly. Otherwise, the US is really going to suffer. And ultimately, the important thing to note here is that it's the US citizens that suffer. And they're being failed
Exactly.
twice. They're being failed twice. They're being failed the first time because they're not going to be allowed access. They're not going to have access to all of those opportunities that DLT, blockchain technology, and crypto is affording people around the world. So they're being failed on that level. And they're being failed because they're also not going to be getting the protections that a proper regulatory regime can afford them. And exactly those people that are most in need of a regulatory framework are being left hung out to dry by the complete refusal to engage in a proper regulatory framework. So,
Yeah.
it's sad for the industry, but it's even more sad for those people that are most in need of actual action.
Well said. A little off topic here, Ollie, but one thing that I want to say partly gets my blood boiling, but partly just literally makes me laugh out loud, is all of the political members in the states who do insider trading. I'm sure you've seen the Nancy Pelosi stock trader on Twitter. She's up 150% in the last year. Last week, you had multiple governors, multiple people in politics who bought army and war stocks before Saturday. And for the listeners, this episode is going to air on Thursday, the 20th of October, I believe. But last week, you had Palestine and Israel, and you had senators and legitimate political people in the states buying. How the hell does this keep happening? What do you think about that? To me, I think it's laughable on all ends. I'm a bit jealous as well because I'd love to make some cake on that. But what's your 2 cents in that regard?
Well, I don't know enough about the US political system or about the specifics of what's going on there. But I think the principle is really important, which is that whenever you have rules about trading and about transparency, clarity is the most important thing. And people need to feel not only are the rules fair, but they're being applied in a fair way. And so I don't know whether X, Y, or Z person, or I should say Z person, has done it, whatever it is they're accused of having done. But I think the lesson that we can learn across the financial services sector is people get really annoyed about this stuff. It really
100%.
It really creates this them and us mentality. And it's not just politicians, right? There's a sense that, and this is something that crypto can really help with, there's a sense that if you're rich, you play by different rules, right? And actually, the financial services sector is designed like that, right? There's a whole suite of products in the traditional finance sphere where we say to people, sorry, these are complex financial products. You can't have access to them. You're too poor or too stupid. You're not allowed to play here, right? And no wonder they get annoyed at that. No wonder they think the system's stacked against them. And actually, no wonder then they look to crypto and say, well, look, help us out here. How can we get involved? We're not too stupid. We want some exposure to this kind of stuff. We're willing to educate ourselves. We're willing to play by the rules, but we're just being shut out of the door. We're not even getting a foot in the door. We're just being told no. And, that's one of the many opportunities that crypto is affording people around the world. And that's before you even come to the issue of people that can't get bank accounts and don't have access to traditional banking at all.
Yeah. Let's jump into Bittrex Global here. Give myself and the listeners a little primer about what you guys are working on and what's going to pop off over the next couple of years. I know you got a shitload of stuff in the pipeline. Already one of the most established and secure global exchanges on the planet. We'd love to see that. We need more guys like you and more exchanges like Bittrex that actually take care of customers and not the FTXs and the other scumbags that are in the space. But give us a quick primer on what exactly you guys are doing right now and what you have planned over the next couple of years.
Sure. Obviously, at the moment, we're suffering through this bear market. So when I say it's an exciting time, it kind of sounds weird, but it's true that it's an exciting time. And it's exciting because I think the scandals of last year have forced people back to basics. People have realized that actually the Bittrex Global approach, which has always been focused on our core products, focused on our principles of security, innovation, and regulation, and provide to people a straightforward but incredibly robust spot exchange, is actually now seen as a breath of fresh air to people. And it's all of the additional bells and whistles and complications and bright neon lights and headline grabbing that we've never engaged in that seems to have got a lot of people into a lot of trouble. And actually, even down to things like, look at the structure chart coming out of the FTX hearings. And obviously, the trial of Sam Bankman-Fried is coming on now. No, I spent my time as a regulatory lawyer. I've seen some pretty damn complicated structure charts in my time for entirely legitimate reasons. I'm not going to say, wow, it's not just one company. They must have been up to something nefarious. I'm not an idiot. But even I and my closest friends and people I've worked with for a long time looked at that and went, poof, we can't make heads or tails of this. How was anyone supposed to know who it was they were transacting with? When FTX said they were regulated, you weren't actually basing that regulated entity. You weren't like the services being provided from God only knows where. Right? Yeah. Actually, Bittrex Global, if you're a customer of Bittrex Global Bermuda Limited, you go on the website and it says you're a customer of Bittrex Global Bermuda Limited, and then you go on the BMA's register of authorized or regulated companies, it's Bittrex Global Bermuda Limited. And like, it's so stupid that I have to say that, like I'm like saying something novel or exciting. Like, that's how it should be. But there are people receiving services and they just don't know where they're getting them from. They don't know how they're getting them. And so what we're focused on is, as I say, our three principles: security, innovation, and regulation. Security is at the heart of everything that we do. Our founders were security engineers by background. The entire premise of Bittrex was, they wanted to get involved in crypto, looked at what was out there from a security perspective and realized it all sucked. And they could either lose all their money on other exchanges or they could write their own. So they decided to write their own. And the foundation myth of the company, I say myth, it almost certainly didn't happen like this, but apparently over the course of the weekend, they sat down in one of their basements and wrote the code that became Bittrex. Like, okay, maybe it was a couple of weeks, but it's a good story, right? And in the wake of the scandals from last year, people are suddenly massively animated by that, as well they should be. Innovation, similarly, are we going to go for the headline grabbing, but ultimately empty promises? No, absolutely not. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to work within our regulatory frameworks, engage deeply with our customers on what it is they want to see, what features they want, how to make the platform work for them, and provide them that. And I think those people that try and say that there's a trade-off between regulation and innovation, I don't buy that at all. I don't agree with that at all. I think regulation provides you the framework within which to innovate. I agree.
You need to know the rules. You can't know the rules, you can't win. Like it's plain as simple as that.
I think that's right. And it gives you a framework and it says, right, here is some space in which you can innovate. Go out and do it. And then finally, of course, regulation, working in conjunction with the other two, that's how we win people's trust back. There's a complete lack of trust at the moment. There's a complete antipathy, I think, towards a lot of crypto, especially in the retail space. The institutions are different. Institutions, I think, are still really interested and still really engaging in crypto. But at the retail level, we need to win people's trust back. And we're not going to do that by being showy and having more cults of personality and SBF-like nonsense. We're going to do that by being deliberate, concise, conservative, calm, and dare I say it, just a little bit boring.
Yeah, no, very well said. Oliver, this has been an absolute treat. One more thing on Bittrex here. Next couple of years, what do you guys have popping off? Anything for us, people on the outside to look forward to?
There's an awful lot in the pipeline right now. They say during bear markets you should build. And so we've been building away. We've got a lot of interesting features coming up, some product lines coming up. You'll have to watch this space.
I love it. Sounds good. Quick little segment in the Hot Take Factory and then we'll wrap up. I feel like you've got a bunch of spicy ones, which I can't wait to hear. It doesn't have to be crypto, blockchain, regulation related. Can be health, wealth, happiness, AI, space, politics, war, you name it. But any Ollie hot takes before we let you go?
Hot takes. I mean, the one I'm going to come back to is always do your own research. The joy of crypto, the joy of this space is that unlike traditional finance, with enough time and effort, you can actually find out what's going on. Right? I've spoken to some of the most sophisticated derivatives traders that the city has to offer, and at heart, they can't always really explain what it is they're trading. That's not true of crypto. The information is out there, it can be done, and that's how you gain confidence in what you're doing. So you can never read enough, you can never learn enough, and if that has to be in a twee little phrase of do your own research, then so be it.
I love that. Just added that to the show notes. DYOR, folks. Probably one of the best and most underrated term in all of crypto. Oliver, what an episode. Thank you so much for coming on. Truly appreciate it. And need you on for round 2 as we barely scratch the surface here. Before we let you go, can you please let our listeners know where they can find you and Bittrex Global online and on socials?
Absolutely. So our website's bittrexglobal.com. Our Twitter handle is at Bittrex Global, unless you're in the UK, because of those UK rules that come in, where you have to go to at Bittrex Global UK. And you can find me at Oliver Linch. Hey, it's important. You don't mess around with these things.
No, it is.
And you can find me at Oliver Linch, both on LinkedIn and on Twitter.
Hey, when are you coming to my homeland? When are you guys going to open up shop in Canada? Or you're like, nah, we don't want that.
We have a good partnership with a firm in Canada. And, you guys are doing some interesting things out there. There's actually a Canadian association in Bermuda that are lobbying on how to make some waves in Canada too. So, maybe next time we have this conversation, I'll be able to put you guys up there with the EU and Dubai and Singapore in those jurisdictions that are really pushing to make crypto a thing. And I'm not kidding on that. There's going to be jurisdictions around the world saying, how do we get in on the action?
I love that. I mean, very unlikely for my country, but c'est la vie. Ollie, what an episode. Thanks again, man. Truly appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it, son.
Folks, what an episode with Oliver Linch, CEO of Bittrex Global. He was dropping knowledge bombs left, right, and center. Anything regulatory framework related, security, innovation, regulation. He talked about it, learned a ton. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly did. If you did, please do subscribe. It would mean the world to my team and I. Speaking to the team, love you guys so much. Thank you for everything. Eustace, my amazing sound editor, you are the GOAT and you know it. I love you. And back to the listeners, love you guys. Thank you for always as listening. Keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy, and keep on growing those bags. Bye for now, and we'll talk soon.